Hi, welcome to the studio. We're going to be talking about oil mediums today, and specifically a group of contemporary mediums called Liquin. Now, oil mediums are actually the things that define the paint itself and came into use during the 15th century. The most common medium is linseed oil, and linseed oil helps extend the paint, increase the gloss, and increase the flow. Second traditional oil medium is stand oil. Stand oil is a little thicker, a little more viscous, and it helps beef up the sense of the paint a bit, and is also more slow drying, but it does increase the gloss. Now, liquid mediums do exactly the same things that traditional mediums do, but the advantage is they decrease the drying time by about 50%. And in addition, they increase the durability and flexibility of the paint film itself, so you actually have a more stable paint film. Now, liquid mediums come in 5 different varieties. The first one that I want to talk about is Liquin Original. And Liquin Original comes out as a sort of jelly. And I can take my oil paint, and you can see that the oil paint is very buttery. It has a stiffness to it. Now, to get that to flow better, all I do is mix the two together, and suddenly I've got a nice puddle of red paint. And I've increased the volume of that red paint by quite a bit. Now, Liquin Original has a slight satiny finish to it. And what I'm going to do now is use a brush and apply it to the canvas. Now, notice that even though I've extended the oil paint quite a bit, that it still preserves the richness and opacity of that cadmium red. And as you can see, that as I brush the paint onto the canvas here, that the brush strokes are disappearing and blending together. Liquid light gel is similar to original, but it has a more silky feeling and is a looser medium than Liquid Original. It increases the gloss more than the Liquid Original does, and again extends the paint. Now here you can see that the consistency of the light gel is very different than the original. That it comes out very much like jelly. And as you work it, it becomes a liquid or more fluid. And that's called thixotropic. And one thing that will happen is that if I let this material set for a while, it will turn back into a jelly. This time I'm going to use less red so that the transparency that the light gel can bring to the painting is more evident. You can see that even though I've used an opaque color, that it's now working as a glaze. Liquid fine detail is very different than original and light gel. It's more like the original linseed oil in that it's very, very fluid and allows you to get very fine details in your work. You can see that it runs out easily. I'm going to mix it up using just a little bit of solvent. Making a nice pool of color. And now when you do find details, you want to use a small brush. I prefer to use a round. You can see that because I'm using a fine brush, I can get very small strokes. So if fine detail is what you want, this really is the medium for you. You can see that as I squeeze this out, that the oil paint has a thick, rich, buttery quality. And this is something that we appreciate about oil paint. The impasto medium maintains that buttery quality, and as I squeeze this out, you can see that it's almost exactly the same. And I'm going to mix it up with the palette knife, back and forth, and then apply it to the canvas and all those wonderful peaks and valleys and ridges that you see are preserved. And if you want that thick, rich textural quality in your painting, this is the medium for you. This time I'm only going to put out a small amount of the cadmium red and then add quite a large volume of the oleopasto. And as I mix this together, you can see that the cadmium red is really volumized. I've increased the amount of paint that I can use. And as I apply it to the canvas, you can see that it doesn't have the texture that the impasto medium does. So if you'd like greater volume with your paint without increasing the texture, then oleopasto is the medium for you. All liquid mediums are suitable for use with conventional oils, including Winton, Griffin alkyds, artist grade oils, and of course, oil bar. We're lucky to be living in the 21st century. Van Eyck, Van Gogh, Rembrandt, even Picasso would kill for the quality of mediums and colors that we have. Thank you for your interest in Liquin Mediums, and if you have further questions or want more information, please go to our website at www.windsornewton.com or please consult our product literature.
When you want to protect something, you put a protective coating in front of it. If it's an art piece, glass or plexiglass. But if you're painting with oil or acrylics or alkyds, you don't normally frame behind glass, but they still must be protected. The best way to protect an oil painting or an acrylic or an alkyd painting is with a varnish. Varnishes produce a film in front of the painting that does not become part of the actual paint surface and offers the same protection that this piece of plexiglass did to my eye when we opened this presentation. Welcome to the studio. I'm going to show you some of the things about varnishing and how you should do it and the materials you can use. Varnishes should be clear. They should also be non-yellowing, and they must be flexible. The canvas will move due to temperature changes or humidity changes, or possibly somebody just touching the canvas or moving it. Varnishes for canvas must be flexible. Inflexible varnishes will crack over time and will spoil the look of the painting. Dambar varnish is one of the older varnishes that's been still around and is being used. It dries to very high gloss, and it's a natural varnish. It does, however, amber over time, and it is a very brittle varnish when it dries. It is suitable for paintings done on panel or rigid supports. The next varnish I'd like to talk about is Artist's Gloss Varnish. This is a ketone varnish, and it is soluble in mineral spirits. It is also non-yellowing. Conservate varnishes are made of a mixture of varnishes. They are easily removable for 100 years. They are non-yellowing. And they can be blended together to produce different levels of finish. They come in two finishes, a gloss and a matte. And you, the artist, can mix them together to produce anything from a high gloss finish to a matte surface or a satin finish on your paintings. Before you varnish your oil painting, you should wait 6 to 12 months. Oil paint dries by oxidation, and when you put a layer of varnish on top, you are cutting off the essential oxygen that is required in the curing process of the oil paint. If by chance you do want to put a varnish on sooner than that, you can use Artist's Retouch varnish, and that will allow you to put a temporary coat on until the painting is able to be varnished properly after the period of 6 to 12 months. Artist's Retouching varnish can be used as a temporary coating on a painting. Also, we have Dambar Retouching varnish, which is a version of the Dambar varnish I was talking about earlier. Both these varnishes should not be applied to a painting until at least 30 days after it is touch dry. We're now going to varnish a painting. And the first thing we want to have is an area that is free of dust, that is not damp. You don't varnish a painting on a damp day, as it can cause the varnish to bloom. You also want to use a good varnishing brush. The brush I'm using here is a Monarch 2-inch synthetic mongoose. It is very soft, and the hair is very firmly attached, so it will not come off and mix with the varnish while you're applying the varnish. The worst thing you want happening in a varnish is to have a rag hair get off in the varnish while you're trying to do the varnishing process. Now we're going to start varnishing the painting. This is Conservate varnish, and I'm just going to decant it into this can here, and let's varnish the painting. Taking the brush here, and I'm starting to apply the varnish in slightly overlapping strokes back and forth down the canvas. So I run out of varnish, I go back and get more. I don't want to get a lot of varnish. I don't want to flood the painting with it. And I also don't want to agitate the varnish and create air bubbles, because I'll make marks in the final finish. Going back in. Once you start varnishing, keep up a fairly steady rhythm and try and get it finished as quickly as you can. Go back in here. I'm now going to look down the painting and see if there's any spots that are missed. There aren't. I'm turning it 90 degrees, and then I'm very quickly going to just level off the varnish coat over the whole painting. I am not going back in to do a stroke, otherwise it'll start to dull the varnish and it will give a bad finish when I'm complete. And there we are, and that is the painting varnished. Now the painting is varnished, you will notice that all the sunken areas have now been leveled out, the colors are brighter, and the surface is totally unified. Besides protecting this painting, we have now given it a cosmetic treatment. It looks a lot better than it did before, and it is now protected for time. Thank you for your interest in Winsor Newton Artist Varnishes. For more information, visit Winsor Newton on the web at www.windsornewton.com or check our product literature. Hello, welcome to the studio. I'm going to share something very exciting with you, the new Winsor Newton large watercolor pans. William Windsor discovered the moisture retention qualities of glycerin, and it allowed him to make moist pan watercolor that allow for instant applications of color for the painter. Winsor Newton now puts out colors in tubes and in pans. Tubes are used for large applications of washes where you have to put out large quantities of color. Pans allow you to instantly pick up color and start to work without having the fuss or the bother to have to try and open up tubes. Winsor Newton large watercolor pans are 13 times the size of a half pan watercolor. They allowed a large area for mixing and picking up color. The dishes are porcelain. They hold large quantities of the wash, so you can build up large wash quantities in the inside, and the sloped side of the container allows you to take surplus color off your brush and to point your brush before you start to paint. The porcelain dishes are stackable. You can stack them up, keep them on the corner of your drawing board or in your studio for whenever you need instant color for large applications of washes. The watercolor pans allow color to be released the minute water is on the pan. By adding more water to the pan, you can mix up very strong, juicy, heavy washes and very high intensity. This is cadmium yellow I'm using here, which is an opaque pigment, and it's coloring over the existing watercolor. And just look at that color. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, this was from a dry pan, and just immediately the color starts to wet up. I can switch to another color here. I'm taking a bit of Opera Rose, and if I take that, just add the water, and it's wetting up, and look, I'm getting absolutely beautiful instant color happening here. And that's the advantage of the pans. For the first time, watercolor painters have got the same thing going for them as oil painters and acrylic painters. I've got my colors here. I can go ahead and I can just reach out and get each color, and if I want a bit of green, I can put it in. If I want to put some violet in, it's at the other end of the palette here. Instantly I pick it up, and I can pick up a really good violet here and just start to put that right in onto my painting. This is something that watercolor painters never ever had before. These things are absolutely amazing. They changed the whole way that watercolorists are going to paint. The minute I started working with these things, I just couldn't believe how good they were. Winsor Newton pan and tube watercolors are formulated differently. Many artists take the tube color and squeeze it out onto a palette, and they allow the color to dry. This color is not formulated for this, and what will happen is the color becomes very dry and in some cases gray, and it will not re-wet properly when you're working with it. Tube colors have agents in them that help with the blending and the dispersion of color, and these disappear when the paint dries. What you're left with here is basically the pigment with all the things that Winsor Newton has put in the color to make it a true artist's watercolor. The idea of dispensing tube colors out and letting them dry is not recommended. You are far better, if you want instant color, to use pans. Up until now, that was a little trickier because there were the small pans. But now that we have these large pans, artists have instant color that they can use anytime and don't have to put out tube color and let it dry overnight and try and re-wet it in the morning. The choice is yours. Whether you want to work in Winsor Newton Artist Watercolor in tubes or in the super new Artist Watercolor pans. Both offer the best artist watercolor and working properties that as a watercolorist you can expect. For more information, visit Winsor Newton on the web at www.windsornewton.com or our product literature. Thank you very much.